Have any redditors been hypnotized? Was it a hoax or did it work? Story 1. Not me, but my brother went to a hypnotism show, was asked to come on stage and proceeded to spend the next 10 minutes furiously looking for his as he had dropped it somewhere in the crowd. Funniest ever. Edit. He was invited on stage, got hypnotized into thinking he'd lost his, and was running around a hall asking everybody if they had seen it. Edit 2. I believe he was actually hypnotized. I thought that was a given. I was hypnotized a couple of years ago. It definitely was not fake. However, it was not as if my mind was being controlled. I felt incredibly relaxed. Whenever the hypnotist said to do something, I never felt forced, but it was more of an obviously I'm going to do that right now, even for incredibly ridiculous things. One part that stands out in my mind is he told all of the participants that on the count of 3 we would look down and realize we were completely naked. When he hit 3, I remember looking down and then looking up to the large crowd watching me, feeling incredibly embarrassed, and ran behind the curtain that was near me. My friend, who was also being hypnotized, and is a lot more confident in himself, got a huge grin on his face, put his hips, and seemed incredibly proud of himself. Story 2. Like most people, I had a hypnotist as entertainment at one of my high school after-proms. The hypnotist had all of the subjects reverse their shoes sometime during the show. After the show, one of the girls who was just hypnotized sat next to a bunch of us, with her shoes still on the wrong feet. We were all trying to convince her that her shoes were on incorrectly, and she, at first, refused to believe us. Then the more we pressed her about it, the more scared she became. She was so confused about what was happening that she was tearing up and asking us if she should switch them. All of subjects eventually remembered the events that happened during the hypnotism, though, so it wasn't permanent. Story 3. Side note, Darren Brown in his book tells the story of a hypnotist who was putting on a show and it was going well except for one guy. So the hypnotist had a word in his ear and said, "Play along and he'll pay you 100." The show went great and the guy was really acting it up. When the show finished, the hypnotist sent everyone but that guy back to their seats. Then he turned and said, "Sleep, when you wake, no matter what anybody else says, you will believe that I owe you 100. And wide awake. Edit. For those interested, the book is called Trick of the Mind and it is a really interesting read, covering topics like hypnosis, magic, memory, and psychology. Story 4. This was not me but a very close friend of mine. We went to the fair and they had a hypnotism act. Unless my friend is the most sneaky, secretive person, and I had no idea this was not staged at all. When he asked who wanted to be brought up to the stage, I pretty much jumped on my seat and told him to pick her. Sure enough, he did. They brought up about 10 people, did all their little tricks, even made her think that she won the lottery. She was crying on stage and told everyone that she actually lost her job that day and that this was a gift from God. The entire audience cringed. After it was all said and done and we asked her what happened, she just said she remembers all of it like you would remember a dream. You think back telling yourself obviously that was not real, but in the moment you had felt as real as it gets. Story 5. My aunt was a smoker for 32 years with no intentions to quit smoking. Her friend asked her to go see a quit smoking hypnotist with her, which she reluctantly agreed to. After they left, my aunt, who had no intentions and wasn't buying into the whole hypnotism thing, never smoked again. Her friend, who wanted to quit and believed it would work, kept smoking. Story 6. I've been hypnotized several times. In what they call a highly suggestible person. The first time I was hypnotized, I was at a high school show and the hypnotist performed a test on the audience to show you how suggestible you are. You close your eyes and hold both of your arms straight out in front of you, palm side down. Then he starts his soothing mystic voice and tells you that you have a brick tied to your left hand and a helium balloon tied to your right. After a few seconds, everyone opens their eyes. The more susceptible to hypnosis you are, the further apart your hands would be. That night, I was hypnotized in the audience. After falling out of my chair, I somehow managed to crawl into the aisle and basically laid there the whole night. The whole time I was worried that I looked like Anne and my pants were pulled down too far, but it was near impossible to solve the situation. At a stage hypnosis show, you cognizant the entire time. The only thing that matters though is the hypnotist. His voice and gaze are like, well, hypnotic. Even though you are focused on that one person, your mind still works and you can still rationalize. So for example, if the hypnotist were to tell you that the number 6 would be missing from your vocabulary and then ask you to count your fingers, your response without hesitation would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, but in your mind you would still be thinking that's wrong, there's a 6 in there, for some reason you just can't verbalize it. The same goes for when the hypnotist asks you to do stupid or humiliating, like flex in front of the audience, dance, or milk an invisible cow. You're half thinking about pleasing the hypnotist and half thinking, I can't believe I'm doing this. I was hypnotized twice at college shows, once in the audience and once on the stage. Recently, while working with local businesses, I was hypnotized in a cigar shop by a patron who was sort of a jack of all trades. I had been having a severe gallbladder attack and it ended up soothing my pain a good deal. Though he also gave everyone else in the shop a little show with all the parlor tricks, which I was not anticipating, but it's all good. I think the weirdest experience I had was in high school. One day a teacher decided to start class off with a nature walk. We all put our heads down on our desks and he basically started the hypnosis. The whole feel your body relax, feel your arms relax, feel your fingers relax, so on until you feel like your whole body is melting into the table. He never brought the class out of the trance, so when the whole deal was over I was sitting there like a drug dope. He had to take me into the hallway and bring me out of it, told me then that his father was a hypnotist, That's where he got the nature walk and knew what was going on with me and how to bring me out of it. Embarrassment aside, being hypnotized is the most relaxing and wonderful experience ever. It's like taking a nap for hours. You feel like you're under for many, many hours and there is no shitty after-nap hangover. You just feel completely relaxed and refreshed. Overall, if you believe that hypnotism is a crock of, then, in a way, you are right. If you enter it with that mentality, there is little chance you will be susceptible enough to go under. But if you approach it with an open mind, clear your head and listen to the voice of the hypnotist, you are opening yourself up to a really awesome experience. If you ever want to try it, just download any hypnosis track online. Steve G. Jones has some amazing ones. I listen to his 5 Diamond series at night, with track hypnosis tapes. Don't be surprised if you fall completely under, like, fall asleep during the hypnosis portion and then wake up right after the tape is over or when the hypnotist brings you out of the trance. Oh, also, for every show I've been to with a hypnotist and a stage, there are a few people on stage who are not hypnotized. The hypnotist knows that, but is aware that these people just want a showboat and will make for a great presentation, so he will usually pull one of them up for a QA that will result in the whole audience going berserk. So if you do ever watch a show and think, yeah, that person isn't hypnotized, then you might be right. TLDR, hypnosis can and will work if you are suggestible, but if you go into it thinking it's baloney, your preconceived notions will probably prevent you from being hypnotized. Edited to add. I also think hypnosis has a lot to do with the hypnotist's voice. It might be that I and some others are very sensitive to the cadence and frequency of their voices. Considering there are studies concerning binaural beats and relaxation, I can see how this makes a difference. If anyone wants to induce a completely relaxing experience, download and listen to Weightless by Marconi Union. Even better if you lay down, close your eyes, and breath while you listen. It's a total Zen experience. I have tried many hypnosis CDs that promise relaxation, abundance, and many other things. Do they work? TBH, I don't know. All I know is that after each session I feel amazing, refreshed, joyful, and generally more optimistic and ready to take on the day. And that can't be a bad thing. When it comes to listening to tapes, the term placebo effect may accurately describe what is going on. Still, I don't see how it's out of the question that your brain could take in information, process it, and store it for later recall, essentially over time changing your perception of yourself. Will you listen to a confidence tape and wake up the next day a new person? No, but maybe your brain will start to recognize the negative concerns you feel about yourself and replace them with the mantras you are hearing night after night. I'm going to make the grand assumption that, due to the fact that I can slip into a hypnosis state during a taped countdown and wake up as the hypnotist counts back at the end of the tape, that my brain is listening and processing the information I hear when I'm basically asleep. I've mainly listened to tapes by Marlene Schippel, who has an unusual cadence but still manages to relax me into a hypnotic state. I prefer male hypnotists though. Telman Knudsen. Despite the quality of his YouTube videos, I have been able to be hypnotized. There are times I've been too distracted to relax though. I recommended Steve G. Jones linked to a newer site above, but balked when I got to his site. I purchased many of his audios on sale for less than $1 each. I think they were on sale again Memorial Day weekend. Make sure to check back with him. I'm sure he has sales often. I don't know if these tapes work, but for less than $1 they are awesome for falling into a hypnotic state. If you want to try, he starts out with a really soothing experiential story. In one, you're flying over the pyramids of Egypt. In another, you're relaxing on your own private island, ECT, that is incredibly relaxing. By the time he gets to the countdown, you're basically already totally relaxed. It's an awesome way to fall asleep. The only problem I've had with his recordings is that I end up waking up immediately after it's over. NP. I just fall right back to sleep. Update. I've added a new link for Steve G. Jones. I should mention that when I made my orders I used a prepaid gift card, not the one where you need your name on it, and again, each MP3 was heavily discounted. I think either $0.75 or $0.99. To answer the original question at hand, is hypnotism a hoax? No, I don't think so. Even if those of us who have been hypnotized are essentially just placebo affecting ourselves into this weird, unexplainable, dreamlike state, I still don't think that would qualify it as a hoax. Regardless of what you may think, being under hypnosis is like an out-of-body experience, something I cannot mimic on my own just sitting down and trying really hard. I think hypnosis would be a hoax if in every single instance every person on stage was completely faking it for a show. As far as a stage hypnosis show goes, I find it near impossible to ignore the advice or commands of a hypnotist right in front of you. The question at hand is still why, and the answer is certainly more complicated than the idea that I'm deceiving myself and consciously constructing a very odd, confusing experience. Story 7. I was hypnotized on a cruise last year. It was really quite bizarre. It was a group hypnosis, and explained how not everyone would go under, so he did quite a few exercises sort of thing to out those under who could, and then went round as he did it to remove the people that weren't be hypnotized. I wasn't as deeply under as some people were, so I remember bits and pieces. He just got us to do silly things. You're completely aware of everything too, but you just have this urge need to do what he says. Obviously, if you're not going to do something you're not willing to do, but everything he was saying was just fun things, so it was fine. Would be interesting to see what a one-on-one would be like. Story 8. We had a hypnotist at our senior night after we graduated from high school. Our whole senior class watched the 5 volunteers go up on stage, and I guess he also tried to hypnotize the audience as well to see who was susceptible get more volunteers. A few more people went under, but one girl started to freak the out. I guess when he told us to think about going deeper down a hole, she thought she was underwater, so she started to hold her breath and wouldn't wake up. Got real for about 5 minutes until he was able to snap her out of whatever she was doing. Not sure if she was just doing it for attention, but her lips started to turn blue, so it was pretty scary. She was fine, but the dude stayed like an hour after his show was done just to make sure that she wouldn't fall back into whatever he did. I was hypnotized once. It was 90 fake. They relax you on stage with weird music, and then they tell you to do stuff. The stuff gets stranger as the show goes on. You just get comfortable doing stupid things and everyone is laughing so you don't feel bad. I remember it all, but I don't recall being embarrassed. Edit. Also, the next day at school, I told everyone that wasn't a good friend that it was real just to keep going along with the fun. Sorry for perpetuating it. Story 9. Back about 26 years ago, I was hurting pretty bad 247 after I had broken my back and it had taken the ankylosing spondylitis I already had and made everything worse. Pain meds were not helping. My doctor suggested pain management through biofeedback. I agreed to try it. I had nothing to lose and did not want to spend my life on pain meds that didn't work. In biofeedback, a trained pain psychologist starts by hypnotizing you. Mine was very good and highly respected, but she could not hypnotize me. What she was able to do was teach me self-hypnosis and how to bring the level of pain down to a tolerable level. It works for me with many types of pain and health issues. For the past 12 years I've been dealing with peripheral neuropathy, and it isn't helping with that type of pain, but neither are the pain meds. What seems to help the most is mental stimulation, things that encourage me to think and interact with. PC RPG games work nicely for that, as does public forums on the computer. Also helpful is when weather allows and I can go outside and work in the garden or in my shop. But if weather is too hot, too cold or heavy rain, then that option isn't open to me. Today is hot, humid and raining, so today, Reddit is helping me manage my pain. Story 10. My aunt and uncle were hypnotized to quit smoking. They haven't had a cig in years. Personally, I would like to try it, just to get some memories back from the old partying days. Story 11 was part of one of those shows on a college campus. Me and some buddies were called up. Didn't work on me. They excused me along with a few others. But my friends did some silly things and swore up and down they don't remember it. Story 12. I learned how to do hypnosis when I was about 16 and I've kept it up on a fairly regular basis until the age of 26. And it's definitely not a hoax. The thing to remember is that you basically hypnotize yourself. The way I explain it is like a guided meditation. There's a reason we refer to things as suggestions, and it's because we're not forcing you to do anything. It's not witchcraft, we just get you to a stage where things seem like they're your ideas. As long as they don't clash too much with what your internal view of yourself is, or your view of what would cause you harm, then you're likely to go along with it. I also make about 20 of my income from writing erotic hypnosis stories. It's a bigger market than you'd think. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I've got time to kill. Edit. For the wonderful perverts who keep asking, you can find the stories here. Story 13. Darren Brown describes it in one of his books. It's been a while, but I believe it was a mixture of placebo effect, being suggestible, and not letting the host down. So after the host has picked out the most suggestible people, the people that are not truly hypnotized will most likely play along anyway. If you believe the host has these hypnotic powers, it will work. If you're familiar with the techniques, it will most likely not. I do however believe this is very real, but I don't actually consider that hypnotism. It's much more about psychology and suggestibility. Story 14. We had a hypnotist at our school one day. He got a volunteer who had done it before and had him smell 2 colognes. One was sweet smelling and the other was actually a smelling salt. He said that the sweet cologne would smell like vinegar. The guy, now hypnotized, and without telling him it was supposed to be sweet, said it smelled of vinegar. He then told him the next cologne, actually a smelling salt, would be very sweet and flowery smelling. He took a large whiff of the smelling salt and loved the smell of it. He then told him to wake up and smell it again, and he couldn't hardly smell it because it was so strong. If you have ever sniffed a smelling salt package, you would know you couldn't take a huge whiff of it. It was amazing. Story 15. In college we had a hypnotist perform for Greek week, so I volunteered. From my recollection I was playing along and nothing too eventful happened. Flashback to last year when I find old Facebook pictures of that night. In the pictures, my friend and I are both shirtless giving sorority girls lap dances in the front row. I have no recollection to this day. I think it worked. Story 16. I was hypnotized at a medieval fair one time. Some magician made me close my eyes, said some spooky or magical sounding, and then claimed that I would obey his every command. Obviously this charade had no effect on me. But when he instructed me to raise my hands above my head and whatever other basic he told me to do to prove that I was under his hypnotic spell, I just played along. Honestly, I felt bad for the guy. It must being a carnival magician for a living. Last thing he needs is an audience which thinks he blows at it. After the hypnotism, he shook my hand and thanked me quite emphatically, almost like he knew I did him a favor and saved him from embarrassment of not being able to hypnotize another audience participant. TLDR, I was hypnotized at a community fair, but it didn't work, so I played along and helped the hypnotist put on a good show. Story 17. I think hypnotism only works with people who have the right mindset, something like the placebo effect. If you don't believe in it, then it won't work, so if you do believe in it and a skilled hypnotizer is trying to hypnotize you, it'll work. This is just my opinion, so don't downvote me into oblivion, because I know it's mostly you for your opinion on Reddit. Story 18. There's a good deal of skepticism involved with stage hypnosis. It seems like a lot of the time the hypnotists aren't even using hypnotic induction techniques, so it's more suggestion and trickery than actual hypnosis. Story 19. 2 years ago, I went to a convention that had a hypnotist show on a late Saturday evening. That show turned out to be an 18 hypnotist show. He asked for some volunteers to go up, and me being the skeptic, I ended up going up with the encouragement from some of my friends. So I won't go into too much detail in terms of me being all sleepy and all that jazz, but as a person who no matter how drunk I get I will not ever dance or sing, but this guy was able to get me to dance provocatively against a stranger I have never met before. He also told me that there was a button on my wrist and only he could trigger it. I proceeded to moan very loudly whenever he came by and did it. There was another moment where he told me whenever I tried to say my name that I would get this feeling that insects were biting my testicles. The crazy thing to me was I knew what I was doing deep down, but I couldn't control it. It was honestly the most bizarre thing ever. I'm actually going to that same convention this year, though I'm not entirely certain if he will be there. If he is, I might try it again given the opportunity. Edit. My friend recorded the dance and put it up on YouTube. I cannot for the life of me watch it as I cringe way too hard. The one on the left. Story 20. I've been hypnotized. But truthfully it did not work. Even though it didn't work I still played along. Hypnosis creates an atmosphere where you could ridicule yourself as much as you want and it doesn't matter, because the audience will think the hypnotist is making you do these crazy actions. Story 21. My mother used to meditate to relax. Seems simple enough. During one of our city's fairs they had a guy hypnotizing people, so being a good son I volunteered my mother. He did the whole count backwards, close your eyes stuff, then she just never woke up. After an hour or so we had to go collect her off the stage and she was still kinda out of it. She didn't go to sleep or anything, she just shut down, sleepy enough to leave her phone and purse there. Along with that all that Darren Brown guy, I would have to say it is real. Story 22. I don't believe it to be a hoax, but there are many personal factors that make it work or not. For me, I tried hypnosis to try to stop smoking cigs. It didn't work. I was not open to the suggestive powers. The reason in my mind was 100 the setting. It was in this guy's home office and it felt really unprofessional. As a result I expected it not to work and left a window in my brain open to my surroundings instead of devoting 100 of my cognitive process to the hypnosis. Anyways, not a hoax, but very particular. The biggest part one think is the person has to be open to hypnosis or want it to happen. Story 23. I was hypnotized at a show during my college's new student week my freshman year, and again the next year by the same guy when I was a student leader for the event. I can assure you that it was not a hoax, but that it doesn't work like you imagine it to. I always pictured being hypnotized as falling into a deep sleep, but in my case I was in full control of my body. I knew what was going on, and I was able to remember everything. The only thing different about my night was that anything the hypnotist said was the best idea I had ever heard. It was like pretend I'm a lifeguard and yell at an audience member for peeing in the pool. Of course I should do that. You're a genius. It was also one of the most relaxing experiences of my life. I've never slept better. At one point the hypnotist told me the girl next to me had the biggest, most beautiful breasts in the world, expecting me to be totally into it. Instead I looked recoiled and yelled gross. And that's the story of how I came out to the entire freshman class. Story 24. I was accidentally hypnotized at a USO show in Spain in 2005. I was in the audience, really tired, and drinking beer. The hypnotist saw me falling asleep and brought me on stage. I remember doing things like giving birth, holding my newborn son, and having my voice crack with joy when I was asked what gender my child was. I'm a man by the way. It was an interesting experience where I was about 50 aware at any given time. It is very similar to the feeling you have when you wake up in the middle of the night to pee. Everything is hazy, but you are in control. He definitely wouldn't have been able to make me do something that I'm not comfortable with. Story 25. I tried. I have really bad ADHD, so it did not work for me. It worked for several other people. This one older lady, I felt so bad for her. She did some raunchy things on stage. Story 26. One time, I was having a lazy Sunday afternoon watching TV. I kept flipping channels trying to find something to watch, when I stumbled across this show and felt compelled to keep watching. I don't remember anything from the hours between then and when my roommate showed up and turned the TV off. Story 27. On the last day of school for seniors my school hired a hypnotist. Most of us were wary because we thought it couldn't be real. The hypnotist called up about 15 volunteers and performed about 5 tests to narrow the group down to 8 people. With the 8 people he supposedly hypnotized them, making them 1 pose as if on Time magazine, 2 act like a farm animal, 3 play musical instruments, 4 act ridiculous. As a member of the audience none of this looked legit. Out of the 8 people, only 2 looked like they were really into it. These were the 2 people who were put to sleep and could not remember their names. The other 6 were clearly faking it and even admitted to it after. What I learned after is that if you truly believe you're going to be hypnotized, then it will actually happen. The 2 people that believed didn't remember anything about the whole ordeal. The other 6 were non-believers, and it showed. TLDR, if you want to be hypnotized, you have to actually believe you're going to be and don't fake it. Story 28. I was hypnotized as part of a group at the office Christmas party. Well, hypnotized, I didn't feel like it was doing anything, and I just went along with the suggestions because I didn't want to be that spoiled the game. You know, there was that energy you have when you're having fun in a big group, but I felt like I was just doing improv. So either it didn't work, or it worked so well I had no idea it worked. Story 29. I have been on stage to be hypnotized twice and was not actually hypnotized either time. It's all social suggestion for stage hypnotism. At least, the people on stage either perceive the social suggestion to be hypnotism or don't want to say that the hypnotism didn't work on them. If everybody in the crowd buys into the idea that it's real, it gives even the shyest person the perfect cover to do whatever, and the hypnotist is always in total control and able to send people off the stage if they don't seem to be playing along. Story 30. I went on stage for a hypnotist show when I was in camp as a little kid. At first I listened to the things that the hypnotist asked me to do: pretend I'm fishing, pretend to hold up heavy weights, etc. Everything the hypnotist wanted me to do was clearly explained and repeated. At a certain point in the show, I realized that I was stress-free in front of a large crowd, 750 kids and counselors, and that it was very fun. I acted out what the hypnotist asked me, and I embellished a bit with acting and my own jokes. People asked me afterwards if it was real, and I lied and said it was. I talked to the other people on stage and they all said they were acting too. I had one other friend on stage I believed and trusted, but the others could have been lying. I gathered that the sensation of carelessness that I experienced could be a form of altered consciousness, but I had full control of every action that I did. I distinctly remember trying not to laugh to make my performance better, wanting a different part than I got, and not feeling any stress or worry whatsoever. It was interesting and very fun. I recommend doing it yourself to get more insight. TLDR, I acted pretended to be hypnotized because it's a unique, stress-free opportunity to make a fool of yourself without consequences. However, I can only speak for myself. Story 31. I've hypnotized others for fun only and am not a licensed hypnotherapist. From first-hand experience, some people are highly suggestible. I use a patter, which is a script that allows the subject to relax and focus, but confuses the thinking mind. I use deepeners, which are little guided meditations like visualizing walking down stairs, often accompanied by a countdown, lots of suggestions to relax different body parts, and sometimes snapping fingers. Once someone is in a very deep trance, there are physiological signals such as slower breathing. Typically then ID makes some suggestion, such as that when they wake up, they won't remember they are in a trance, but every time they hear a certain word they will forget how to speak English, and then a different word will allow them to remember. Some suggestions work better than others, and some subjects are able to do way more with it than others. Much of what I used it for was sexy fun, like hypnotically induced orgasms. TLDR, I hypnotized people to make them. Story 32. Me and a group of friends went to a comedy show once that was a hypnotist. Going in, I kind of had it in the back of my head that there were people planted in the audience that were just part of the show and would pretend to be hypnotized. Then a couple of people from our group got hypnotized, and I knew it wasn't fake. They said it was like a really lucid dream. Story 33. My high school put on a celebration for the graduating class where they brought in a hypnotist. He asked for a bunch of volunteers and I ended up going up there. He sat us all down in front of everyone and then proceeded to hypnotize us. It's all about your state of mind when you're up there. If you just sit there and think this doesn't work and resist, then it really won't. I got put under and it felt very lucid. I was aware of my surrounding and was consciously aware of what was going on, but when the hypnotist would tell me to do something, I would do it. It's all about the power of suggestion. When you're put under, you're willing to do things that seem silly or embarrassing. The hypnotist messed up his saying at one point, and I almost tackled someone to the ground, and I needed up selling imaginary peanuts to people. It's not like they portray it in movies where you completely forget everything that happened. You enter this calm, tranquil state where you just feel very open to suggestions and feel very at ease. Story 34. I wasn't the one hypnotized, but I was a victim of the hypnosis, as it were. Frosh week at a university. I was on student council, so we had a hand in organizing it some activities for the incoming class. We get a hypnotist. Really cool guy. We have dinner with him before the show for the freshmen, about 2,000 kids, and says hell need one of us to volunteer for the show, but we won't be hypnotized. I agreed. Fast forward to the show and we're all standing just off stage behind the curtains. He's gotten a bunch of volunteers from the audience and puts them under, or whatever. The time of the show comes where he needs me, so he calls me in from off stage. I walk onto the stage, a 6'6" 19-year-old guy, in front of 2,000 people. I regret agreeing to this immediately. He takes the women from his pool of hypnotized people, introduced me to them and the audience, and tells the women that I'm irresistibly attractive, that I'm basically their dream come true, and standing right in front of them. I'm not prepared for this. There were about 4 girls, and their reactions ran the gamut. One girl immediately became super shy and kind of just looked at me coyly with doe eyes, batting her eyelashes and looking away whenever I face her. One girl introduces herself and asks to hang out, and 2 actually initiate physical contact. I'm standing there, mid-stage, nothing around me, and 2 girls legitimately start to feel me up. One throws her arms around my neck, the other starts rubbing my chest and going south. I actually needed to paw away her hand to stop her from trying to me off over my pants. Everyone thinks this is hilarious. I have never blushed so hard in my life. I try to play it off and play along at the same time, also struggling mightily to not pop in front of everyone. The hypnotist lets it go on for a little bit, enjoying my discomfort. Then he tells the girls he was wrong about me. I'm actually repulsive. They scram and act as if they're grossed out. Now I'm a huge skeptic as much as anyone, but this guy basically had girls tugging at my junk on stage in front of thousands. I can't explain it. It was weird, not going to lie. I enjoyed my small 15 seconds of fame around school after that. Story 35. I'm sure this will get buried now, but I have been hypnotized several times. The first time was part of a favor to the wife of a friend. She was trying to get her license as a hypnotist in my state and needed to practice on someone. It was only after I arrived that she told me she was a past life regression hypnotist. I don't believe in past lives. I thought I would try it anyway, because it sounded fun. She put me into an initial training sleep which lasted about 20 minutes. Like others have said, it felt like a 5-minute nap and I woke up completely refreshed. Then she put me under for the next 2 hours. I still don't believe in past life regressions, but some strange things happened while I was under that surprised me. I could totally hear the people outside the window at the house, car alarms and people walking by, yet I was also aware that I was not awake. She asked me many questions about what I was seeing. I told her an elaborate story in episodic detail about having been a simple Chinese peasant girl. I should note that I am a white female who lives in the Pacific Northwest. I have almost no understanding of Chinese history or culture. I have never been to China. I have not read extensively about Chinese history. Each of the episodes felt very real as I was describing it. I could see my body and I could see the bodies, but not the faces of other people. I experienced very strong emotions, some of which I have never experienced before or since. Actually, it was more that I had not experienced those emotions in relation to those situations. For example, though I had not yet had a child at the time, I believed that I had a small baby. However, I felt very little attachment to that child. I was, however, deeply attached to his father. As I have gone on in my own life, I am far more attached to my child than I have ever been to any man. Even at the time, the depth of feeling that she felt for her husband was very foreign to me. It felt less like love than veneration. The emotions were very raw and very intense. The visuals were far more cloudy and difficult to interpret. At some point, about 2 hours into the session, she asked me to describe the house that I was living in. I described a photograph of a soldier on the mantle, and she was surprised to understand that this was all taking place in modern day. She asked me what year things were happening in, and I shouted 1944. When she asked me how the person I was seeing died, I became emotionally distraught and couldn't answer. Eventually she asked me to go above my body and describe what I saw below. I told her that Japanese soldiers were slitting the character's throat. She asked me what had happened to the baby. I said very coldly that it was dead. That was the end of the session. I was quite shaken by the experience. I still don't know what to believe. When I got home I looked up the position of the Japanese in China in 1944, and discovered that the village I had described to her as being in northern China would have been in an area being attacked by the Japanese. Since I had not done much study of the Manchurian campaign, in fact I had not heard about it at all at that time, I was shocked to learn how accurate my memories were. Perhaps at some point I had absorbed that information from some other source. This is the explanation that seems most reasonable to me. However, I also feel it's possible that somehow I tapped into another person's life for a few hours and got to see the world they lived in. I would accept either answer as true. Many years later, I used hypnosis to try to combat my flight anxiety. I did 8 sessions. It was immediately somewhat effective, as my first flight without medication happened just a few weeks later. It was still stressful, and I did not want to fly without medication again. However, in the years since I did the flight anxiety hypnosis, I have noticed my flight anxiety increasingly reduced. I still use medication when I fly, but unlike before, it actually works completely. I experience no anxiety at all. When before it would cut right through whatever medication I was taking, the hypnotist told me that it could take a while for the hypnosis to fully work. I would now say it was worth the money, though at the time I wasn't sure.